Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all things automotive, whether it's the front of the store, the back of the store, or the office upstairs. Doesn't matter. The better we all get at what we do, the better the customer experience. And we all know it's always been about the customer experience. Today you hear a lot of buzzwords. Everybody's talking about, oh, we really need to improve the customer experience. They'll be happier and they'll buy more stuff from us. Well, guess what? I started in this business about 43 years ago, and I learned early on that then it was important, and that never went away.
Right.
So every week we bring on the experts to share with us what they do to help us all get better at the craft of the car business. And this week, like last week, we're coming to you live from the friendly island of Aruba. Had a nice 10-day vacation / working vacation. I'm not quite sure what you call it because I work. And I did spend some time by the pool. Granted, I was creating reels and things like that. So is it work or is it vacation? I don't know. And the funny thing is, you see people post, oh, you got to unplug. Yeah, it's fun to unplug. Mm-hmm. But guess what? When you run several businesses and your website is live 24/7, you can't just unplug.
That's true.
But if you love what you do, it doesn't matter where you do it, because half the time you could do it right from your phone.
That's right.
I brought the laptop to the hotel, so there's time to do work. And our other website, sales are coming in. This morning at 5:26, the buzz from the phone, an order came in from Australia.
Wow.
So,
well, there you go, Paul. That's not bad. I mean, you're having fun over there, huh? It sounds like it's beautiful.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. I've spent more time in the sun. You may notice a little bit more suntan. And the food is phenomenal. Oh my God, we went to a chef's tasting dinner the other night, 12-course dinner. It looked like art. I almost felt bad eating it. It looked so good with wine pairings. Now, I'm not much of a drinker, but I'll tell you what, I had as much wine that night as I've had all year.
Oh my goodness. Well, it looks like you, I don't know, but the background you've got there just feels like you're on the ocean there with your ocean breeze. It just looks fantastic. I can only be with you in spirit. So in spirit of Aruba, I have my beach shirt on.
Well, I appreciate that. The background picture is one that I took just before the sun went down this evening. I figured it would be only appropriate to add that. We got a couple of people tuned in. Timothy Wilson says, good evening, all. He says, are you ever coming back? Yes, sadly, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
But I might have to come back because of a family function that's happening here in a couple of months. So I might take one for the team and get on a plane and come back here. So we would be broadcasting live again from Aruba. And Ed Chipolowski, hello all, and let's all give thanks and prayers for all the men and women who gave their lives for our great country. Amen.
Yes, absolutely. Happy Memorial Day to everybody. I mean, it's incredible. You know, the spirit of our service folks. I come from a family of military myself, so I agree.
Memorial Day is not about hot dogs and barbecues. It's about the sacrifices that all of the people before us have made to give us the freedoms to enjoy the lives that we enjoy today.
Yes, sir.
So they don't get enough. Thanks or attention. Rachel Swanson, hello, Paul and Albert. Excited for the show. And Steve Chesson. There's an emoji of some sort. I can't really tell. And all the way from the West Coast, Michael Weldon. Good evening, and all remember tomorrow. Brought to you by the vets.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to play a quick message here. The car business, it has some universal things. The country, the island, that may all be different, but there are basic processes and procedures that are common to all of us in the car business. And I had the pleasure, I spent a couple hours with Ruben Oroskin, one of the owners of a dealer group in Aruba here. And I got a nice tour of the facilities, and we had great conversations about how they operate their auto dealership. And I put out a short video that was really key because this morning, for instance, on Service Live Drive, #SDL, we spoke about communicating with the customers. And what this guy said in a less than 1 minute video just was beyond profound. So I want to play that now, and then we'll get back into the rest of the show here. So here we go.
Once the vehicle is sold, we make the customers first. The salesperson makes the customers first appointment. They introduce them to service. They introduce them to the BDC, and the BDC makes.
They introduce them to the BDC.
Yeah, because the BDC we have in front in the front counter. When you walk in, the lady sitting there. As you've seen the video, she is now right there calling customers and making appointments and answering phone calls, and so introducing to them, explain the concept of BDC, and so the customer already knows that, hey, if you call an advisor, it's probably going to be too busy to give you an appointment. So the BDC makes the appointment, so the BDC, and we send emails informing them how the process works. So once they come in, it's the first day we give them extra attention to make sure that they know, okay, this is where the service drives work. What can you expect today?
You lay it all out for them in advance.
In advance, yeah, exactly.
I mean, how strong is that? There's no question, right? They introduced the BDC right up front from the sales to service handoff. They explained to the customer right then and there, this is who you're going to be dealing with, because the service advisors are typically very busy trying to get all of the cars up through the shop and back into your hands quicker than, as quick as possible. So right off the bat, they set the stage. There's no question. He said the amount of time they spend on incoming status calls is minimal.
Yep.
You ask yourself now, if you're in a store, how much time do you spend fielding inbound status update calls? And all the people are doing is getting upset because they haven't been updated with what they need. And this store says it right out of the bat. So this week, like every week, I'm really blessed because I've met some incredible people and friends in this business, and I consider Albert Thompson to be
Thank you, Paul.
Next to my heart.
Same here.
And I want you to tell everybody a little bit about you and how you got to this point, and then we'll jump right into the show.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I really appreciate that video. I think one of the things that, is so exciting as we emerge as, retailers, dealerships, whether that be, franchise, independents, or whether you're a national brand, I think, and again, I'll tie all of this into kind of the topic of today's conversation, which is, data and really how we're evolving as marketers and how we're evolving as business owners. But, really going back to what you just said, or shared in that video, right, is we're really moving to people-based one-to-one relationships, right? With all of this thing that we call the internet, everything that we have going on crazy, with all these different channels and methodologies of how we're connecting with consumers, all of that really ties back to just one central theme, which is really exciting, right? Is we're moving back to that central touch point, which is the consumer.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the data is so critically important for us to be able to leverage. The criminals are leveraging it beautifully. And
you had an experience yourself. I mean, you had an experience this week, right? I mean, share. I mean, it was the craziest story I've heard.
Right. So this is how advanced criminals are. And there's no reason why businesses can't be equally advanced, but for positive end. The scammers out there are, every day you get multiple emails from different companies that you may do business with, but the scammers, they don't know for sure whether or not you do business with them, but they're taking a shot that you do. So they figured that I post stuff on social media, a lot of my dining adventures, my dealership interviews, things like that. And so now the scammers know I'm on the island of Aruba. They scrape from social media what people post. Then it's very easy to get other data on their targets, i.e. email address. Now, if you're a traveler, chances are pretty good that you have a known traveler number that you subscribe to, right? It's probability, right? And we're going to get the probability in a little bit.
Yep.
So it's probable that I have a known traveler number. So now they have harvested my email address, and they send me an email supposedly from the TSA telling me that my known traveler number has expired So most people would automatically say, oh shit, I've got to get home, so I better update my information. And there's always a convenient link right in that email. Now, if I wasn't tech savvy, I would have probably clicked on it, but I am tech savvy. So I used another device. I went onto the TSA site. I looked up the status of my TSA number, and I've got better than 2 years left on it. So the email that I got was a phishing scam.
Yep.
And a lot of people would fall victim to it. I know people that personally have fallen victim to phishing scams, and it's cost them thousands of dollars. So technology, it's here. The crooks are leveraging it. The dental offices are leveraging it.
Yep.
So it's time for we to do it. And that's why I'm so excited Albert's on, because as far as I'm concerned, Albert is Mr. Data and Mr. Technology.
Well, I appreciate. Well, listen, I'm learning like you and like everybody. You know, every single day we're constantly evolving. You know what what I like about your story. What I like about your story is that, you know, obviously there's all these different types of channels and ways that we engage in as consumers, right? You know, you're talking about how, hey, you're posting on LinkedIn, you're posting on social media, you're sharing your Aruba story. And even what you just said right there about how you got your email, you logged onto a different device to verify your known travel number, right?
Correct.
So, boom, right there. You just switched devices. You changed your course of how you were verifying somebody, right? Something. Okay. And that's how we engage today as consumers. And it's going to make, you know, when we talk about this today, Paul, I want to really bring that full circle because, you know, really what I want to focus on today is talking about, you know, obviously kind of in an agenda, right? You know, rehashing, you know, what's a first party cookie? What's a third party cookie? What's really the difference? You know, what is that? How does that really involve your business? How does that involve what you do from a marketing standpoint? Then we should really talk about, you know, really how do we leverage our customer data and, you know, how do we match those digital identities, right? Because as these third-party cookies, we've heard about it, right? They're deprecating, they're going away. So you're going to really have to think about, you know, an identity partner, an identity vendor resolution partner to really help you connect these identities to market better. But then at the end of it, right, you know, we really need to talk about the main thing that we started with, which is people-based marketing. And people-based marketing is so important, Paul, because it's different, right? It's going to use the data that a marketer can now collect to identify who these exact customers are and their behavior. And then they're going to be able to use that, you know, to be able to create these identifiers of who these people are. And they can really learn about their personas and their, you know, affluence and their generation and their lifestyle. And we can get better at how we target our customers. And, you know, listen, I was just reading an article the other day. And according to some research from Deloitte, I don't know if you know this, the US household now has an average of 11 connected devices, including 7 screens to view content. Did you know that? 11 connected devices, including 7 different screens to view content.
Wow.
So now more than ever, cookies and pixels and identity and resolution on how we target devices are going to be so important. And people-based marketing, identity resolution, identity graphs, this is how we're going to fill in the gaps in our business data, right? And it's going to take data from our customer relationship management platforms. It's going to take data from offline platforms like courthouse records. It's going to take email data. And to your point, it's going to take an identity, you know, partner that's learned how to build out these ways of different technology to identify who these users are so we can target effectively.
And that's going to eliminate all of the junk that you get. Right? I still get emails now. I had a Lexus. I've had 3 Lexus, but the last one I serviced at a
May have lost Paul there a little bit. I'll tell you what, guys. Can you still hear me on the show, or did Paul just go out for us for a second? If anybody wants to comment. There you are. All right.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened there. We're a little buffer
A
issue.
little bit. A little bit of Rubenness came into the show. That's what happened. A little bit of that ocean breeze disconnected us.
Oh man, I hope that's not going to be an issue here.
Well, if it is,
I had
Paul,
great Wi-Fi last week.
I'll tell you what, man. If it happens again, I am more than able to hold the entire show myself.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, buddy. Well,
Let
I
me
think
get to a
you're
couple
there.
of comments here because I'm falling behind. Let's see here. Abel Aguirre says, "My kind of guy, howdy, Paul." He was referring to Ruben Orostin, the GM/owner of the dealership. Steve Cheston, that PO is by the book perfect. No joke. We all need to do that or a version of that because that's what sets the customer up for success. Now, you notice I say set the customer up for success because, I tune into a couple of Clubhouse rooms now and then, and everybody's talking about, all kinds of things. But nowhere do I hear people talk about what's in it for the customer, how the customer benefits. We collectively don't understand that when the consumer wins, we win by default. It's not about us, it's about the consumer. So I don't know why I went off there. Mark Williamson says, "Hello, peeps," and LinkedIn user. I'm going to guess that's Lamont. After the show, it'll show up as Lamont or somebody else. Says, "You're good." Rachel Swanson, "Yes, can hear you." Timothy Wilson, "I hear you." And Brian Davis, "Turn your camera off, Paul, not because you're not pretty."
There you go. Well, that's if it happens again. We have you now, but if it happens again, maybe we could take Brian's advice and you could turn your camera off.
All right. So let's talk about cookies. And before we talk about cookies, I'll let you know right off the bat, not all cookies are bad. I had 4 sugar cookies from the Kanuku Grill earlier before the show here. They were quite delicious.
No,
let's get into
not
the
all.
techno.
Absolutely right, Paul. So I think it's fair to say let's start from the beginning, right? Which is just a quick refresher, right? Not all cookies are bad, and I think there's a lot of talk today. We talk about the cookieless future, and listen, I'm guilty of it myself, right? I'll post on some comments on LinkedIn. I'll say, are we getting prepared for the cookieless future? And we need to be careful of that, right? Because there really is no cookieless future, right? It's really about third-party cookies versus first-party pixels and first-party technology, right? And why third-party cookies are dying. And there is actually a very, very long life to the first-party pixel technology or first-party cookies, right? So I think it's fair to say, well, what is a cookie, right? What is a first-party cookie? What is a third-party cookie, right? So I think it's important, we talk about web servers, right? Your websites, right? They have memory. They're like a brain, right? And cookies are used by websites to remember user actions. Okay, so that way they're not asked to remember the same task over and over. So think about it this way, Paul. You go to...
It's like RAM. It's like random access memory on a computer.
There you go. That's right. Okay, so it's a small file that contains some numbers and numers and basically some information such as domain, expiration date, things like that, right? It gets downloaded onto your computer when you visit an internet site. And so, first-party cookies or first-party pixels are created and stored by the owners of their own website, right? So AlbertThompson.com, PaulMeijer.com, I can put a first-party pixel on my site, right? It's created and stored by the domain or the website that you have visited, right? So that's the owner of that technology, right? And so here's some type of data that gets recorded by that cookie, right? Your username, your password, perhaps your address, the information that you stored, your payment information, right? Because think about it, every time you go into Amazon, right, you don't have to necessarily re-put in your credit card information, right? That's all. Yeah, that's right. That's all first-party cookies. That's not going anywhere. And so, that information is going to, stay in place for a very long time to come. And the smarter companies are getting ahead of that, with being able to use that to capture, personal identifiable information. It's also getting ahead of capturing user journey, user experience, user analytics that can really start to talk about. Say that again.
You essentially opted in. You give that information.
That's right. That's right. It's created by the owner, so it's your data. So what's the difference between that, Paul, and a third-party cookie? Well, a third-party cookie is created by a domain or a website other than yours that you're visiting directly. Okay, hence the name third party. So think about like an Auto Trader pixel, or you guys have seen like DoubleClick or any of these DSP type pixels, right? They're usually used for online advertising purposes. They're placed to our website through a script or tag, right? And they're good for retargeting, cross-site tracking, collecting browsing history from this site and tying it to that site. And this helps them to make good ad serving decisions, right? So this is going to help you determine
building your profile.
There you go. Paul went to Travelocity. Paul went to Booking.com. Paul went to Kayak. Paul then searched Aruba destinations, right? Then he looked at this hotel. It's really tracking that journey so that it can help you to be able to ad serve you the next hotel option, for example, that you should take in Aruba versus, say, Hawaii, right? So that's the problem that we're having in the future, right? That's where things like, these types of cookies are going to start falling away, and they already are. So, to give you an example, browsers like Safari, okay, and Firefox, they've been deprecating these cookies for years already. And so basically this is going away. Google announced this in 2020. They pushed it to 2023, but that's going to go away. And that accounts for like 60 to 70% of all of our consumer mobile and online traffic. So it's going to be interesting when that deprecates out, and it's going to make it very hard for businesses to advertise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yep. So it's dying. The third-party cookie's dying. I think that's a good enough recap. So then here's the question, right? So what do we do now, right? What's the next step? And I think that leads us to where companies like, like our company, for example, I'm not, trying to be self-serving, but what we're doing is, creating identity resolution platforms. And that's what you're starting to see, right? Companies that create identity resolution platforms, which consist of proprietary identity graphs. And before I get ahead of myself, I think it's important to really talk about what is identity resolution, right? And identity resolution, like we started off the conversation, right? That what do we say? 11 devices, 7 screens?
Yeah.
So regardless of channel, every time a consumer begins to interact with a brand, regardless of that channel, a different identifier really starts to get matched to that person, right? And without getting too technical, Paul, these are called keys. And these keys can be attributed to that individual. Well, these identifiers can really start to include email addresses, IPs, physical addresses, mobile phone numbers, and really trying to solve for who that identity of that person is, right? And the challenge today is, how do we accurately resolve consumer identities, okay, based on all of this disparate data? Because every single site, it might have a different key for the email, a different key for your user ID, a different key for who you are. All of these things are all over the place. And it makes it so difficult for tech companies or any advertisers to be able to really, pull together one single key identifier, okay, that's used to stitch all of this identity data together. And that's what an identity resolution platform does. So I just want to make sure
you need to get ahead of it.
Yeah, you got to get ahead of it. I mean, and there's companies that are doing this, right? And so, really, I think your first step as a business, right, is being able to determine who your identity resolution partner should be, because you're going to have to. Paul, I'm telling you, between you and I, there's no questions asked. It's not a matter. This is what I say when I'm out talking to businesses. It's not a matter of if you're going to have to start marketing with first-party data. It's when you're going to decide to start marketing with first-party data. And that is so super important because, we're moving towards that people-based marketing, right? We talked about that in the beginning. We need to have that one-to-one relationship with our customers. We need to know who they are. Okay, so let me put it to you this way. Did you know that every American is an eagle? I don't know if you're there.
EAGLE.
EAGLE. Every U.S. household is an eagle. And if you think about this, and this is the way that I try to break this down for everybody, make it super simple. Every U.S. household is an eagle. You are an ethnicity. You have affluence. You're generational. What generation do you come from? What's your lifestyle? And what's your environment? Those segments create attributes that comprise what I call the slice of life, right? That's your persona. So think about it. I'm a Caucasian or a Hispanic or an Asian or an African American, right? That's my ethnicity. I make 50, 60, 100, 150,000 a year. That's my affluence, right? My generation. I was born in the 50s. I'm from the 80s. I'm a millennial. That's my generation. My lifestyle. I'm straight. I'm, heterosexual. I'm married. I'm single. I'm divorced. I have children. I have 2 children. I have 3 children. That's my lifestyle. And then last but not least, right, is your environment. Do you live in a rural environment? Are you in a suburban environment? Are you in a city environment? If you take those 5 things, every U.S. household is an eagle. It's kind of nice, ironic here. We're talking about Eagles, Americans, and Memorial Day, but every American household, in our view, is an eagle.
And that's key data, because that data, they say birds of a feather, right? That's right. Key data identifies not only what your behavior is, but what other people like you, what their behavior is. And we're all sick and tired of getting irrelevant messaging that doesn't tie to anything that we're interested in.
That's right.
These data points help the companies, the marketers, pinpoint exactly who your audience is, what they're about, what they engage in, so that you can deliver a relevant message to that person that's going to get their attention. There's so much noise that we get bombarded with today. So much noise. I mean, think about your Facebook feed. Every time you swipe, completely new set of data. Completely new. Every single time you do it.
That's right.
Now, most of that is noise. However, if there's something that pertains to an interest that you have in here, you will click on that and you will engage in it. And chances are pretty good you'll buy something from it because it's relevant. So those 5 key data points, Albert, are freaking stronger than garlic.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, and garlic is pretty strong, man. So but that's the way we make sense of it, right? And another thing I'll always say is I'll say to my retailers when I'm talking to them, I'll say, well, let me ask you this, Mr. and Mrs. Dealer. If I was to ask you to go into your website today, and I was to ask you to pull out anybody who's visited your site in the last 30 days, that's 18 to 25, that's making over 50 grand, that looked at a Chevy Silverado, that's in the military, could you do that?
I'd say probably most of them can't.
I would say 99% of them can't. And the reason why is because they have no centralization to their data, and they have no centralization to who their website traffic is, right? And so, being able to account for who's coming on your site first, right? Paul, that's important, right? So you hear about pixel technology, that's solving for kind of that addressable audience, that PII, but there's more to it, right? There's the eagle segments, right? Who are these people? And if you think about it, Paul, we have OEMs that are asking us to do military campaigns for Memorial Day, or graduation, rebates for graduates, right? Well, how amazing is it?
We don't even know who those people are.
We don't even know who they are. Not only do we not know who they are outside of our network, who's never visited our site, we don't know who they are who have visited our site. So, and this is where we're getting to, and this is what I keep talking about with people-based marketing, right? People-based marketing gives us the ability now to connect the dots, to stitch the identities, to stitch the personas, to stitch who these people are, collect and organize your data, right? Because it's not just necessarily the identity graph data, but it's also your data from your CRM. And you can then really push this into, you own it, right? And then you can identify who these people are, and then you can market in such a smarter way. Can you imagine if you could, as a retailer, go into your website and your data set and say, man, I would love to know who's looking at Silverados today, who's been on my site in the last 30 days, who's a member of the military. And that might only be 62 people, but those 62 individuals can be marketed to in a much more prestigious, like laser focused way. And that's where
Albert,
we need to move
the difference. It's the difference between taking out a Mossberg and shooting your shotgun, or a 308 with a scope. I mean, there's no comparison.
That's it. That's right. And so what you're going to see, Paul, as businesses, and I try to make the most simplistic form, we can out of it, without getting into all these buzzwords of, identity resolution, identity graphs, deterministic versus probabilistic. And I am going to touch on that in a minute, because I think it's important for people to know there are differences between your identity graph partner, as you guys choose, as those that are listening today choose who they're going to partner with to manage and collect their first party data and sort through it. There is different levels of quality, but to your point, starting somewhere where you're now learning to use your first party data versus spray and pray is so important.
Got a couple of comments I want to get to. Mark Williamson says, I did it all for the cookie. Roger Gutierrez, good evening, everyone. Good marketing is vital. And Timothy Wilson says, go Eagles. I don't think it's like those that. Eagles that he was talking about.
Go Eagles, yeah. That's stronger than garlic, as Paul would say.
And Steve Chesson says, every dealer should be all in. Now, here's, my wife and I were joking with each other. There are certain things we say like a lot, and you don't realize you say it until you hear the other person say it. And my thing is, so here's the thing. So I did it again, but I recognize that I did it. So maybe I'll do it one less time going forward.
I like that.
You can take the data that you have, build around it, fine tune it. And earlier I mentioned birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yeah.
You can get other data that matches your data.
Absolutely.
To open up the pool even more.
That's right. That's right. So Paul, when I'm always asked, Albert, I don't understand what's an identity graph and how can it really help my dealership? Right. The first answer to your question is, Mr. Dealer, your ability to, or Mrs. Dealer, your ability to understand and collect and organize your first party data. So that could be your CRM, that's your DMS, but then also the data that's visiting your website, what your customers are looking at, right? That's by having an identity resolution and identity graph, it's going to help you to understand your customer journey way, way, way more and provide more relevant content to these customers to create that seamless brand experience, right? You get a more holistic view. Just like we talked about with the military, you can now layer in demographic behavior, behavioral contextual data. You can add geographic data. Paul, it's so in depth that you can create propensity scoring.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Look, you can look at their LinkedIn,
go ahead.
Their mobile, device ID, business mail, GPS data, IP address, their contacts, browser, personal email. I mean, it's really limitless, the information that you can gather, that you can build the profile. Yeah. But do it now. Start with, the average dealer has 50,000, however many people in their DMS. And then and you own that. These are people that have entrusted you with their money. They've pledged, payments to you. They've given you cash. I mean, crazy. Oh, hold on. We got a comment there. LinkedIn user says, really appreciate the education you are putting out there. I appreciate the people that come on to share. And, this business has been very good to me. It's been very good to Albert. And we just like to give back.
Yeah.
To the company, to the business that's treated us so well. But getting back
Yeah.
to the data, I mean, these points are critical.
They are, right? So just to kind of continue down that journey a little bit, right? So we look at it this way, right? To simplify it. So you've got, these organizations that build identity graphs, and they take all these data sources, and what they really do, Paul, is they try to create a persistent profile. Remember, we talked about how 11 different devices, and how, we're trying to create that seamless experience, that person, to identify that one person. There's really two different kind of models that you're going to hear about out there in the marketplace, right? And so that way, so people don't get confused, there's really basically two types of matching, right? As to how your identity vendor let's put it that way. When you start to search for an identity resolution partner, there's going to be two different types of ways that they actually identify these profiles, these users, these eagles, if you will. Okay. And that's going to be two ways: deterministic matching, and what you're going to hear is probabilistic matching. Okay. So what's the difference, right? And I'll start with probabilistic because it's what people usually get the fastest, right? So people who build their identity graphs, where they take and stitch all the data across different tables, companies that use a probabilistic matching system, they use various different data sets and algorithms to identify that user, okay, across different devices and applications. But the way that they do it, right, is in a probably model, right? So let's imagine that you own a smartphone, a laptop, a tablet, and we use them all at home. As all three devices might have the same IP address and location, just because you would probably look at the same types of websites, this model will say, well, then it's quite probable it's you, Paul Meijer, using all three devices. But we know that's not 100%
Based
true.
on your usage.
That's right. Well, based on that IP or some sort of probabilistic that they use as that matching set, right? Oh, it's the IP XXXXX. So it's probably this household. And now, because I have this device matching to that IP, this device matching to that IP, this device matching to that IP, it's probably Paul Meijer. The key to achieving probabilistic matching is linking those together to create, this person based off of that one probabilistic piece of data, right? Because they might have the same Wi-Fi ID, or they might have the same IP address, right? Okay, so let's talk about the pros and cons. Probabilistic matching is not as accurate as deterministic matching. Just it's not inference, it's truth. It's just not as accurate. But it uses
just
some
by the name alone, probable.
That's
not
right.
Definite,
this is scientific.
probable.
This is no emotion here. This is just the way the algorithms are built, right? One's probabilistic and one's
Data.
deterministic, right? That's it. It's data. It's very empirical. So what's deterministic? Well, deterministic matching, okay, aims to identify the exact same user, but across all these different devices to stitch together these profiles, but they do it in a way that they link the data sets and all the profiles through common identifiers, such as first name, last name, address, email address, date of birth, phone numbers. And usually, Paul, the most common way to deterministically match all these people together is by verifying and validating an email address. That's usually the way they do it, right? Because a person's email address is typically unique to them, right? And that's usually how that algorithm starts. I'm not going to get into the technical stuff about how all those algorithms start matching across the tables, but just know that deterministic means that it knows that you logged in your email on a smartphone. You use the same email login on your PC. You use the same email login on your tablet. You use the same email login on a website, equals Paul Meijer. Okay, and deterministic matching. It's determined because it doesn't matter if I logged in through a smartphone, on a PC, a tablet, or my Roku. I typically am going to use a similar matching email that's going to end up resulting into the user being Albert, right? And it's about 80 to 90% accurate, okay? And that's so important when it comes to an identity graph, because that's the foundation of knowing who that person is, right? And then you can start to build out all these identity graph formulas and, you know, who these people are, and connecting your LinkedIn versus GPS versus LAT versus business mail, all that stuff. And that's where we can start to create our Eagle segments and get better targeting. So it all starts.
We all remember the term. We all remember the term garbage in, garbage out on the computer, right? It's no different with your data. You need to get ahead of it. You build those profiles so that you can stand ahead of the other people competing for the same visit. It's so freaking competitive today.
It is.
You can't hope to be better than the other guy or gal. You need to be better than the other guy or gal.
Right. So, you know, Paul, a lot of times I get like, oh man, well, that's just so complex. You know, how do I even get started as a business, right? How can I even get started as a dealership to do this? Well, you know what? Listen, there's really 4 easy steps to doing this, right? You know, the first step is to identify a vendor resolution partner, right? That has an identity graph and match it based on what your model is, you know, match it. You know, do you need a probabilistic model based on, hey, I just need mass people to figure out who these people are? Do I really want to get laser focused? And do I want to know that the people on my site are 18 to 25 looking at Silverados that are military, right? And when you can do that, then identify if that partner has basically created a universal profile, right? It's called a universal ID that becomes a persistent identifier down to the household of who that person is. And then start working with them about like, hey, let me start building these audiences. Let me start building these targeted audiences. Let me start, you know, pushing that into my marketing, you know, stream, so I can get more targeted with how I focus my advertising. And then from there, you know, then you can start really working into your CRM and your DMS, because that's a little bit down the road, I think, for dealers, you know, to get to the point where, you know, they're going to start pushing in their CRM data and their DMS data into an identity graph. But we're getting there.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
And I don't know. I always try to look at things a little bit differently than most people try to look at it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this, but here, let me share with you my feeling on it. And tell me if you feel that is a correct thought or an incorrect thought. My feeling is you have to utilize as many data sets as possible, right? More is better. And my feeling is that you have a vast database already in your DMS that you've cultivated over many years. So that's your deterministic data, if you will. Now, as far as the probabilistic data, now the way I see that, I see it as something you also need to farm, because that's going to give you that broader reach, maybe less filtered ability to further your branding out. You know, maybe we haven't narrowed down specifically what they're after, but if we can reach a mass audience just by seeing, and I always tell people, the more doors they open and see your face, the greater the probability, here we go, probability, that at some point in time, when they need your services, because it's not about us anymore. Nobody gives a shit what we want, what we need. The new sales model is what you need when you need it. Nobody cares about what we need as a vendor. You care about what you need when you're the customer. So if you then work both your deterministic data, the absolute what you know the behavior, so now you know this is what they're interested in. Here's another data set that matches these profiles that have already spent money with you, but that other data set hasn't spent money with you. They've spent money with other people. So you want a conquest? Building another data set of identical users is key, but that probabilistic set, maybe that's a smaller percentage of your overall spend, but I think that's also important just for mass branding, to just drop your flags everywhere. What are your thoughts on that? Am I off the base, off the mark, or am I in the right direction?
No, I think you are. I think, I guess, when it comes to identifying an identity resolution partner, there's going to be just one of the two models as to how they do it. But you can absolutely, Paul, you're spot on. You can use different types of identity resolution partners in two different ways to accomplish two different things. And at the end of the day, it's understanding your customers better, right? That's the top perk of people-based marketing. And look at it this way. I like what you said about the CRM, because that is so important, right? And it's relevant to dealers today. If you've been in
100%.
business, think about it, right? If you've been in business 10, 15, who knows how many years, all of that data since day one, the moment you sold that car or that customer engaged with you, that data has been degrading. They've moved, they've switched devices, they've changed emails, right? They might have, they might have sold their car 3 or 4 times. Paul, how many times have we done a recall campaign and it's like, dude, that was that car 4 years ago. I don't own it anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
You lose total credibility. The chances of those people ever engaging with you for anything has just gone completely out the window because you have no idea who you're talking to.
Yeah. So we got to get in the mindset as retailers, as dealers, to start thinking about, it's not just about leads anymore. It's not just about getting new sales and how we're going to come in here and use data to drive new sales. Man, it's now thinking, we need to start thinking about how we can get smarter with the way that we use our data to effectively, right, get more laser focused. And think about it this way. Maybe we get to a place where instead of spending $20,000 or $30,000 a month in outbound marketing, we can get down to $5 or $7 grand and get the same results and a better experience with your customer.
Retention. Anybody know that word? Retention?
Yeah. More effective retargeting, right? Having access to specific users and specific data sets and specific, personas on that people, no matter what channel they're using, lays the groundwork for better retargeting.
And here's the example I like to use. Here's the example. I work for big companies. Big companies I'm a firm believer in CRMs, okay? I am a Salesforce diehard. I love Salesforce. My company uses it.
Yep.
Good, better companies use it, okay? Now, there are two profiles of a Salesforce user or a Salesforce company. There is the user and or the company that says, you have 500 people in here. I want you to make notes that you've attempted to contact 500 people. That's one set. And then there's another set that, you know what? I don't care if I don't reach 500 people. Left message, left message, left message. I don't care about that. I would rather reach 50 people, have real one-on-one conversations with, do discoveries with, determine whether or not there's a need. And guess what? Even if there isn't a need, the fact that I've had the conversation and I furthered my relationship with them in itself is a win.
Yeah. So Paul, let me share with you a story, and I hope I'm not getting too in depth here, but let me share with you a story of a current use case right now that we're working with a large automotive SaaS-based company that's going to get into retail leasing for like Teslas. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much details, but they're going to get into that subscription-based model, right? And as they expand into their markets, right, they look to our organization. And what you just said there is so important, because what you can actually start to do with identity resolution, identifying who these customers are, identifying these segments, right? We could take their sales logs of who they've sold, what customers they've sold in the last, so no different than a DMS, okay? Who they've sold, and then we can push this into the identity graph, and then the identity graph can literally do its, voodoo magic and then spit out these eagle segments and literally say,
it's like a centrifuge.
That's right.
It's like a centrifuge in blood.
Right. It's technically speaking, it's regression analysis, but it's a centrifuge that spits out these eagle segments, right? And says, hey, did you know, Mr. Advertiser, that out of the 12 months of your sales in your DMS, that this Caucasian male, 1950s, that is 150,000 and up, okay, lives in the suburbs in these zip codes, comprises of 12% of your conversions. Okay. This next segment basically accounts for 18% of all your sales. This third segment accounts for 45% of all your sales. Well, guess what, Paul? We were able to determine that the top 15% of their audience and their sales was what brought like 76% of all their conversions. The other 85% of the market was waste. You could spend $100,000 on this other 85% of the market, and it only accounted for 23% of their sales. So you get to what's called a law of diminishing returns. And as dealers, we can do the exact same thing. We can use identity resolution, identity graph, audience segmentation to actually learn where 80% of our sales are coming from. And we don't need to spend the entire spray and pray like you put with the Mossberg through modeling. It's really in depth.
Throw something at you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to throw something at you here. Maybe a little unconventional. This is a win-win on so many fronts. It's incredible because I did it again. Here's the thing. I said it again. Remember I said earlier?
Yeah. That's your last one. Yep.
Not only do you know where your top 15% of revenue is coming from, but here's the part that gets me doubly excited. You know where 85% you are not successful with.
Yep.
All right,
So
let me repeat that. You know where you're not successful 85% of the time, and when I worked for CDK, when we looked at managing programs and things and people, we talked about something known as management by exception. We were concerned not so much about the people, and this is throwing a total side whack into this conversation.
Right.
But we were not as much, in that sense, we're not as much concerned about the things that were working well, but we were able to focus on the things that weren't working well to increase the number of things that are working well. And I want to get to a couple of comments. Michael Weldon says, wow, solid information. Wow. I get excited about data, about technology, and about, the Japanese word kaizen, continuous improvement. This is the stuff. I spend way too many hours. My wife sometimes will wake up in the middle of the night and I'm online researching stuff, or I'm contributing in a thread somewhere to learn more about a particular thing. So this is crazy stuff. LinkedIn user says, Paul Meijer, loved your thought about farming from as many deterministic sources as possible. Yeah, it's opportunity, right? Opportunity. Steve Cheston says, this makes third-party inventory sites optional. Database alone is not enough.
No, is enough. He says is enough. He says the database alone is enough.
Is enough. Yeah.
And you know what? And Steven is exactly right. Believe it or not, he's 100% right. Because think about it. For years, we've had all of this traffic coming to our site. We know now, Paul, we have the ability to capture these visitors coming to our site. We have the ability to visualize their journey. We have the visualize to then create them into these segments of like, hey, this is a 18 to 50-year-old auto mechanic, right? So I'm going to serve specific media to that person, right? So, he a spot on.
And Steve Chesson, if you guys are not connected, you need to connect to that guy because that guy was freaking genius way back when. Okay, now when he says this may, you know what? Put that up there. I mean, this is brilliant, Steve. You never cease to amaze me, brother. This makes third-party inventory sites optional. Database alone is enough. Now, think about this for a second. The average dealer, maybe not right now in this artificial economy, but guess what? We're going back to maybe not 100% where we were BC before COVID, but this is not going to go on forever. You'd have to believe in fairy dust and pixie dust if you think this is going to last forever, because it won't.
Okay.
But BC, before COVID, dealers were easily between two of the better known ones, easily spending $10,000 and up per month for this kind of data that they already have in their DMS that they can make better use of.
That's right.
Way better use of. Steve,
way better use. And Paul, I love what you said, because the mindset, right? We have to change the mindset of how we think about marketing in the future. And to your point, right, there is a key to suppressing out data that's not relevant. And why are we spending money to data that's not? Hey, if I knew that 85% of my sales were coming through this 5% of the market, this 5% of the market, and this 5% of the market, why am I going to spend another $100,000 on the other 15%, and waste money?
You could spend $20,000 to find out why you're missing the mark on those other 80,
and still save money.
Yeah,
and still save money. You can spend $20,000 on analysis and still save money. Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting stuff, man. And the great thing about it is this, by the way, this is how the big boys buy. Just so you know, this is how the Walmarts are buying. This is how the Targets are buying. This is, if you don't think that they're doing regression analysis and they're doing propensity modeling, you're crazy. The cool thing about it is it's now in our fingertips. It's in the fingertips of dealers. You have the ability now to partner with the right identity graph to do these types of analysis, to identify which segments are working, which segments are not, and then figure out how to market strategically. And then you really can do amazing things. And have a better relationship.
Before you made a statement, I don't want to seem self-serving. It's not self-serving. Okay, let's define that. Because there's an old saying, it's not bragging if it's true.
Sure.
And I firmly believe that. Okay.
I agree.
So we could pussyfoot around, we could beat around the bush, or we can just say it. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to have a conversation. If you're not connected with Albert, connect with him.
Yeah.
Call him and have a conversation. Let him know that you heard about it on this show. For those that watch it now, for those that watch it on the replay.
Yep.
Because this is valuable data. And yes, we are in the car business, but this is data that goes well beyond the car business. If you own a business and you have a website, you need to know this stuff.
You do. You do need to know this stuff. And I agree with you. And Paul, we hope that, it's specifically for any vertical, but for auto, I agree with you. We're spending massive amounts of revenue. We're spending massive amounts of dollars to continue to improve upon data, to continue to improve upon data science, modeling, and all of that is just to help our dealers do this in a legal way, because that's important, right? You got to do this legally. You got to do this through compliance. You got to make sure you're following CCPA, GDPR, all those acronyms, right?
Because it'll bite you if you don't.
It will bite you if you don't. And here's the other thing too. Dealers don't have time for that. They need to focus on doing what they do best, which is selling cars. And they need to, find
customers.
That's right. And they need to find the partner that's going to take them into the future, because this is, like I said in the beginning of the show, Paul, it's not a matter of if this is coming, it's when they're going to be buying media through first party.
And it's already happening.
So listen, as a matter of fact, it's funny that you said that. I just posted on LinkedIn a few days ago. It's no longer about first market advantage. If you haven't already started, you're late.
Yeah.
You're late. Because you need to find a way to own your data. You need to find a way to collect that data. You need to find a way to stitch it together. You need to find a way to analyze it and then market to it in a private, compliant, and personalized way. Personalization.
And who better to receive your marketing information than your customer that's already invested in you, that already trusts you, that is already open and receptive to getting relevant messaging from you.
Yep. And relevant, I know we're coming to an end here soon here, Paul, but I do want to say relevant, because one of the things that we didn't even get to, and something I definitely want to say is, nobody even realizes, this, but do you realize that one of the biggest benefits of getting identity resolution and figuring out who your people-based marketing strategy is to stop targeting bots? One of the benefits that no one even talks about is with traditional targeting methods, most of the ads end up in the feeds of online robots. Internet bots pose as real people. to visit
Yeah.
fake websites to do what? To scam you on LinkedIn to get you to get a known traveler identity, so you can get scammed. So stop targeting bots.
Oh my God. This is,
I couldn't believe your
Albert,
story,
this is
man. That was
brilliant
crazy.
stuff, man.
Yeah, no, it was good, man. This was
This
a
is
good show.
absolutely brilliant stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
And
Well,
I
enjoy
always
Aruba.
like to say that we always remember what we forgot to ask when we had the opportunity to do so. And the beauty of the internet is that it runs 24/7. And realistically, those of us that are go-getters also run 24/7 in some way,
I'm
shape, or
available
form. So if you
24/7. I'm available
remember
24/7.
something that you forgot, reach out to Albert, reach out to myself, let him know you saw this show and you'd like to learn a little bit more information. We try to keep it high level because not everybody is the data geeks like we are, but at least this makes it relatable in a way that, hey, that sounds like something I need to be doing or something that I thought about doing, but I don't know where to start. And it all starts with a conversation. To anybody that saw value in this show tonight, do us and your community a solid and share this post with them, because this will benefit everybody. We got a couple of comments. Share it out. It's highly entertaining, but even more educating. Great job, gents. Jared, thank you for your continued support, man. I really appreciate
Jared,
it.
thank you. I do appreciate you as
So
well.
reach out, and it all starts with a conversation. And share this post with your community because somebody will benefit from it. And guess what? If a friend turned me on to something that helps me, I appreciate that friend even more. So thanks for tuning in. Albert, thank you very much.
Paul,
And
thank you as always.
wish everybody a safe and prosperous next week. We'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. We'll be coming back to you from our studios in Niantic, Connecticut. Thanks again for
Happy
tuning in.
Memorial Day, everybody.